am going to call on our next self-advocate, Ria, to come and introduce our next speaker, please.
It is my pleasure to be able to introduce Dr. Moses Simelane. Dr. Simelane has dedicated his career to education, starting as a teacher and moving on to the National Education Department for the last 6 years. He has tirelessly been leading his team at the Department of Education as Chief Director of Curriculum, Implementation and Monitoring. Welcome, Dr. Simelane, and thank you for being here today to share your experience.
Program Director, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed guests and advocates of inclusivity, I greet you all. And thanks to the young lady for a very kind introduction. She really made me feel comfortable being here and to even come and stand in front of all of you. So as we commemorate World Down Syndrome Day, we are reminded of the profound impact that awareness and understanding can have on shaping a more inclusive and compassionate society. It is fitting that we convene on this day, a day chosen to symbolize the uniqueness of individuals with Down syndrome, characterized by the triplication of the 21st chromosome. In the basic education sector, inclusivity is not merely a goal, but a fundamental human right, enshrined in the preamble of the Constitution, enjoining us to heal the divisions of the past and establish a society based on democratic values, social justice, and fundamental human rights. From the perspective of basic education, this means that every child, regardless of their abilities or differences, deserves access to quality education in an environment that nurtures their potential and fosters their growth. It is heartening to acknowledge the strides made by basic education towards realizing the vision. The Department of Basic Education plays a pivotal role in ensuring that learners with Down syndrome and other disabilities are not only accommodated, but fully supported within the education system through various policies and initiatives. The basic education endeavors to create an inclusive environment where every child can thrive. This includes the provision of specialized support services, such as trained teachers, to accommodate every learner, and therapies, tailored curriculum modifications or adaptations, and assistive devices and technologies, all aimed at addressing the unique needs of all learners, including those with Down syndrome. The basic education promulgated the well-known Education White Paper 6 to guide its efforts in developing an inclusive education and training system. Education White Paper 6 provides a comprehensive policy framework outlining the principles, goals, and strategies for achieving inclusive education in South Africa. It provides a legal basis for promoting the rights of learners with special needs, and of course, including those with disabilities such as Down syndrome, and guiding the development and implementation of inclusive education policies and practices. It emphasizes the importance of diversity and equity in education, recognizing that every learner has unique strengths, needs, and potential. And I think the issue of identifying the strength of each individual becomes critically important, rather than looking at a deficit approach in looking at especially learners with disabilities. We've got to identify their strengths and therefore build from their strengths in order to enhance their participation in learning. So, Education White Paper 6 aims to ensure equal access to quality education for all learners, regardless of their background, abilities, or disabilities. Education White Paper 6 marks a shift away from the segregation of learners with special needs in separate, specialized settings towards the inclusion of these learners in mainstream schools. We'll all remember Article 24, right? That is what it advocates. It advocates for a continuum of support within mainstream education, allowing learners with diverse needs to learn together in the same classroom whenever possible, and will be to ensure that all these efforts are actually in the best interest of every child. It prioritizes the empowerment of learners with special needs and their families, recognizing them as active participants in the education process, an imperative to which the policy on SEAS gives expression. I think we've heard from Marie's presentation how important it is to involve parents in every decision, and even in the decision that we take about their learners in terms of how they can be best supported, because they will know better. Parents will know better because they have been with these children right from birth. So therefore, they will augment to all the efforts that as teachers we put to supporting every learner. It emphasizes the importance of building the capacity of teachers, schools, and education systems to effectively implement inclusive education practices. It calls for the provision of training, of resources, and support services to help teachers meet the diverse needs of learners and create inclusive learning environments. Education White Paper 6 highlights the importance of collaboration and partnerships among government departments, education stakeholders, civil society organizations, and communities to promote inclusive education. And in this regard, if I may pause for a few seconds, for us, as South Africa, as Department of Basic Education, to succeed in all our endeavors of including every child, it is always important that we need to be mindful of a multidisciplinary approach towards building an inclusive education system. Because as basic education alone, this mandate is too big for us to undertake. And therefore, we need every expertise that is available at our disposal. It also emphasizes the need for ongoing monitoring and evaluation of inclusive education policies and practices to ensure their effectiveness and impact. It calls for the development of monitoring and evaluation frameworks, indicators, and mechanisms to track progress towards achieving inclusive education goals and outcomes. In this regard, the minister established the ministerial task team in January 2023 to review Education White Paper 6. I mean, especially after Education White Paper 6 had actually run its course, because it was launched in July 2001, and it was said to be field tested. I'm carefully saying field tested for 20 years. I'm mentioning this, I'm talking about field testing because, as we may be aware, a white paper is not a fully fledged policy. Therefore, what the white paper does, it articulates policy aspirations and identifies some strategic imperatives that need to be tried. But we cannot end there. We cannot always implement inclusive education from a white paper. And therefore, that is why Minister has called for a review of Education White Paper 6. I can imagine, and my wish is that in the process of reviewing Education White Paper 6, the ministerial task team will come with a fully fledged, imagine, inclusive education policy in South Africa. That's what I'm hoping for. That is what I'm looking forward to. Because a fully fledged policy is more binding, even in terms of commanding the provision of resources to roll out the policy. It provides a comprehensive roadmap for transforming our education system to better meet the needs of every learner and uphold their right to quality education and lifelong learning, as articulated, of course, in Sustainable Development Goal number 4, with the vision that it sets for all education systems across the globe to 2030. So to give expression to the above commitments, the Basic Education has embarked on several interventions, including the following. And that is schools, through school governing body mechanisms, to continue to adopt inclusive policies that promote diversity and cater to the individual needs of learners, including, of course, learners with Down syndrome. This includes policies related to admissions to school, to curriculum modification or adaptations, assessment, so that even assessment is diversified to cater to assessment needs of each individual learner. And discipline, of course. In this regard, schools should foster a culture of inclusion where all learners feel valued and respected. And there's nothing that beats feeling valued in any setting that you find yourself. And of course, respected as an individual, with dignity and all. Secondly, teachers play a critical role in creating an inclusive classroom environment. So provincial education departments provide ongoing training and professional development opportunities for teachers to enhance their understanding of and capacity to meet the learning needs of all learners. including those with Down syndrome, and learn effective teaching strategies to support learners with diverse learning needs. For instance, I was listening very attentively to the presentation that Marie has just made, where she actually isolated strengths of Down syndrome learners, or learners with Down syndrome, that they are more visual, that they can learn language, I think, faster. And all those strengths are strengths that we need, that teachers need to be aware of so that they can build their engagement with learners based on their strengths. In this regard of training or building capacity of teachers, over 90,000 educators have been trained in specialized areas of inclusion. I can mention here, training in Braille, training in South African Sign Language, training in autism. You know, the list goes on. Of inclusion since 2017 to date, over 178,000 teachers, over 10,000 officials, and over 8,000 early childhood development practitioners have been trained on the implementation of the CS policy. In fact, we started with training ECD practitioners in 2020, as if, in fact, we were already aware that ECD was going to move to basic education. So we wanted to introduce the implementation of the CS policy even to ECD practitioners working with children from birth to 4-year-olds, so that potential barriers to learning can be identified as early as possible for intervention and support to be provided. Schools should provide access to specialized support services, including trained teachers, therapists, and support staff. These professionals can offer individualized support and interventions to address the specific learning needs of learners. In this regard, provincial education departments train teachers in ways of differentiating the curriculum to ensure that the curriculum is geared towards diverse learning needs of learners. Also, provincial education departments must ensure that school facilities and resources are accessible to all learners. This includes providing assistive devices and technologies, adaptive equipment, and modifications of physical spaces to accommodate learners with mobility impairments or other disabilities. If I may also pause just for a second here, in terms of providing technologies, I am happy to report that from 2020 or 2021, Minister instructed that all special schools be prioritized for connectivity and provision of assistive devices. So out of the 447 special schools, already 311 have already been provided with connectivity for purposes of teaching and learning. And these connectivities, to have access to internet as well, is accompanied by provision of assistive devices that are relevant to the learners admitted in those schools. So as part of psychosocial support initiatives, schools must promote peer support and social integration by fostering positive relationships among learners with or without disabilities. This can be achieved through inclusive extracurricular activities, peer mentoring programs, and opportunities for collaborative learning. In addition, schools should implement anti-bullying policies and advocacy initiatives to ensure the safety and well-being of learners, including learners with disabilities. This must involve raising awareness about disability rights, providing training on conflict resolution and empathy building, and fostering zero-tolerance approaches to discrimination and harassment. Schools should actively involve families and the broader community in the education and support of learners, including those with Down syndrome. This may include establishing partnerships with local organizations, hosting parent support groups, and facilitating open communication between school staff and families. We are in the season of school governing body elections, which is one of our major interventions for ensuring parental involvement and participation, which is crucial for improving access to education for all learners. In terms of involving other stakeholders, I'm also happy to report that from 2019, we've been working in partnership with the Department of Employment and Labor on a program of transitioning learners from school to work, to the work environment. We have seen learners with disabilities getting employment, permanent employment, and we've been setting annual targets. I think this year, this ending financial year, our target was around 1,500 learners with disabilities being prepared to transition to the world of work. So, however, despite these commendable efforts, we cannot ignore the challenges that persist, particularly for parents navigating the educational landscape for their children with Down syndrome. The journey to enroll a child with Down syndrome in a school is often fraught with obstacles, ranging from bureaucratic red tapes to deep-rooted societal misconceptions of the disability. It is unfortunate, and we are mindful of the challenges, but we will continue urging parents to work very closely with the department so that together we can find solutions. So parents often face an uphill battle as they advocate for their child's right to education, encountering resistance and skepticism along the way. The lack of awareness and understanding surrounding Down syndrome can lead to stigmatization and discrimination, further complicating the process of enrollment and integration. So given the above, as we gather to celebrate World Down Syndrome Day, let us reflect on the profound meaning behind this year's theme, dismantling stereotypes, uniting voices for change. At its core, this theme encapsulates the essence of our collective mission to challenge preconceived notions and misconceptions surrounding Down syndrome and advocate for a more inclusive and equitable society. It calls upon each of us to lend our voices to the anthem of change, standing united in our commitment to break down barriers and foster understanding and acceptance. By dismantling stereotypes, we will not only empower individuals with Down syndrome to live their lives to the fullest, but will also create a more compassionate and inclusive world for future generations. Together, let us amplify our voices and champion the rights, dignity, and potential of every individual, regardless of their ability. In this regard, I would like to urge each one of us to realize this opportunity, to seize this opportunity, not only to raise awareness, but to effect tangible change. Let us harness the power of our collective voices to dismantle stereotypes, empower individuals with Down syndrome, and pave the way for a future where every child is valued, supported, and given the opportunity to shine. I thank you.